from YouTube for episode 88 of the Beefy Boys Breakdown. I'm rolling solo this week. My boys, RIP to Harrison's phone. He's got to work that out, but show must go on, as they say. And yeah, man, I really enjoyed this UFC Fight Night Blachowicz versus Rakic card. I was looking forward to this one for a cool minute, and I don't, you can't say that for all Fight Night cards, obviously. Jan Blachowicz, I still, in my eyes, kind of view him as a champion. I know Glover Teixeira is the champion. He hasn't been the most active champion to remind us. Obviously he fights very, very soon, so that's kind of a moot point. But, I still hold Jan Blachowicz in very high regards. And I am the only guy out there who's not just riding Rakic's nutsack. Jesus Christ, the past couple fights Rakic has given us were snoozers. He fights like once every 18 months. And you can't even blame the pandemic because I think that goes back before the pandemic. Um, I don't know why everybody's riding Rakic's nuts. Like the Beefy Boys Breakdown is one of the only shows out there that's, I guess, not like, I wouldn't say we're anti-Rakic. I might say we're anti-Rakic. Like, out of all the light heavyweights to be excited about, and I'm not talking about, yeah, okay, he's good. Obviously, he's good. He's three in the world. Like, I'm not commenting on how good he is. But as far as yeah, there's the rankings, right? But if I had my own rankings of like who I wanted to watch fight, he would be unranked. Like I just don't enjoy watching Rakic fights, generally speaking. Saturday night was pretty good. Not the best I've ever seen, and didn't knock my socks off, but it was all right. But yeah, diving into this main card. If you watched the prelim segment of this episode of Beefy Boys Breakdown, then you heard me talk about. I thought there was multiple fights on the prelims that could have easily been on this main card, and then there's a few fights on this main card that I thought could have been on the prelims. This Jake Hadley versus Nasimento, in my mind, is one of the ones I was referring to. We got Jake Hadley making his debut. He's 8-0, undefeated. I feel you, a little hype coming in at minus 195 favorite, and again, it's Nasimento, and I believe that was another one of Charles Oliveira's guys, coming out of Brazil. So with the blonde hair, coming in at plus 165 in the men's flyweight division. So some flyweight action going on last night. Gino said I like activity in that division. That division needs a little juice. So I think they're starting to give it to it. Some new prospects coming in, so I feel them trying to showcase the division, showcase the prospects. But I thought that easily this fight could have been on the prelims. But this fight was all Nasimento, which I think was a lot of people's surprise. I think the UFC put this on the main card to kind of hype Hadley. Vegas had Hadley 2-1. Nasimento, like I said, one of Charlie Oliveira's guys, I believe. And so, he was winning all the scrambles. He was getting the sweeps, the control time. Just it was pretty much a jiu-jitsu match. And usually that's like a backhanded compliment. Like usually that's kind of like a code name for a snoozer, but that's not what I mean at all. For that style of fight, it was actually pretty entertaining, pretty competitive. Now, Nasimento, I had him winning every round. The judges had him winning every round. And obviously, this is the oversimplification of all oversimplifications, but kind of tongue in cheek after the fight. My takeaway was that's what it looks like when an Englishman tries to out Brazilian jiu-jitsu a Brazilian guy. And it's yeah, that's obviously a broad stroke and that's an oversimplification. But I feel like there's also a little nugget of truth somewhere in there. I thought Hadley would have been a lot better off just mixing it up. I'm not saying it had to be a Muay Thai match, but just some weird bottom elbows or just literally anything else. Just that it wasn't the most violent fight. It was literally a grappling match, and he got out grappled. So I feel like Hadley, had he mixed it up, hence mixed martial arts, he would have been a lot better off. Nasimento gets the win. Interesting new flyweights. I'm all here for new flyweights. Let's let him get a couple of fights in the belt under the belt. That division needs the depth. So I'm not gonna shit on any of these guys. It was a good performance. They both fought well. Nasimento came out, looked a little on the right side of things. Yeah, I'm glad that men's flyweights getting some depth. That's really my biggest takeaway on that. If you're looking for more, I'm sorry, that's my biggest takeaway. I'm not a jiu-jitsu expert, so there's a lot of. I'm sure somebody else can break down the X's and O's, but it was just a bunch of scrambling, a bunch of jiu-jitsus, a bunch of sweeps. To jiu-jitsu is plural. Yeah, take that, casuals. But Yeah, it was entertaining for what it was, for what it was. It was obviously no Gagey Chandler, but it was its own style of fight, and I respect it. And really, we'll keep it pushing. 'Cause like I said, there wasn't really any controversy. I thought the most controversial thing about that fight was that it was on the main card. Take that for how you will. But next we got Frank Camacho versus Manuel Torres. And while this fight ended up being a banger, and you can understand the logic of why it was on the main card of like, oh, this is going to be an entertaining fight. Maybe I'm naive, but I'd like to think we've moved past that. It's not, 2005, where we just are here for pure violence. Like there's some competitive architecture and name recognition. And, I know Frank Camacho has name recognition, but I don't know. I thought this is another fight that could have potentially been swapped with one of the ranked prelim fighters. Um, that being said, kind of a moot point. We'll go with Frank Camacho plus 115 versus Manuel Torres in his debut. A lot of guys making their debut in this card at minus 135. A lot of guys favored in their debut. And me and Harrison talk about on the podcast sometimes how there's actual real. We went from bro science to real science. We used to say it was like 70%, and we're just talking kind of anecdotally of like guys making their debut lose. Now it's a broad stroke, and there's different guys, different caliber of guys making different caliber of debuts, but all debuts included. We're like, yeah, it's like 70%. Now the real number is closer to 58, 59%. So not as dramatic. But generally speaking, a lot of guys making their debuts lose. And so, like, I think almost everybody making their debut on this card was favored by Vegas. So just interesting little side note there for the bettors. Fight took place in the fight took place in the lightweight division. Um, and man, this fight didn't last long. It was a round one TKO via the right hook. Um, Daniel Torres, gets the performance bonus, first bonus of the night. Which I thought the bonus, I have a little bone to pick with kind of how the bonuses were handed out. Now, granted, a guy in his debut, usually those guys need the money more. I'm not mad at it. Brutal first round knockout. Awesome, kid. Knock yourself out. Don't spend it all in one place. Um, but I do think there was fights on this card, and we'll get to them that could have potentially got bonuses that didn't. And but this fight was a banger while it lasted. I mean, while Camacho, did get knocked out in the round one, while he was conscious, he was swinging back, he was landing some good shots of his own, testing the guy in his debut. Another man, and it sucks because it happens so often when Herb Dean is reffing a fight. Unfortunately, I mean, I know he's viewed as a legend, and rightfully so. But there's just so many questionable moments with Herb where he's kind of like halfway in, halfway out. Like this isn't a situation where when you're the guy who decides like how like when to stop this guy's like beating, like you kind of have his life in your hands. It's not like a wishy-washy, like, and I'm Captain Wishy-washy, happy medium, find a compromise, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. No, like that is a black or white, yes or no. Like you got to be decisive in that moment if you're an MMA rep. And Herb Dean was like, he was like hitting a hezzy with the stoppage. He was like, oh, am I going to stop it? I don't know. Like he wasn't confident in it. I don't like that at all, especially for a guy as experienced as Herb. Like, what? There's not really an excuse. You know what I'm saying? No, that being said, I agreed with the stoppage. That's not my point. I don't think it was early. I don't think it was late. But if you would go back and watch it, he was just like him hawing. Yeah, that's a term. That's how you know I'm from Oklahoma. He was just like, just kind of bullshitting around, just like, just like halfway in, halfway out, not really fully committing to the point where I believe Manuel Torres was looking at him like, what do you want me to do, dude? Like, he was kind of giving mixed signals. Just a bad look. Kind of, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that, but it was a good fight, as far as what actually took place between the athletes. Torres gets the bonus in his debut. That always got to feel good. He was probably scheduled to make like 24 grand. He probably more than like doubled, tripled what he was going to make. So that's awesome for him. And yeah, good for him. I have to keep an eye for Manuel Torres. It's always tough to get excited about young lightweights. It's just such a long journey in the lightweight division. Like you got to win 4 fights before we know who you are. You know what I'm saying? It's just there's so many big names sucking the oxygen out of the room. and that metaphorically in that lightweight division to where it's hard for these young prospects to gain traction as opposed to maybe some of these other, light heavyweight, middleweight, welter, it's yeah, there's different degrees in all those examples I just gave you, but maybe a little easier to gain traction. Lightweight, it's tough to gain traction. Some of the star power, even at the back end of the division. But yeah, man, we can keep it pushing. Next up, we got a big, really important match in the women's flyweight division. We got Caitlin Chikagian ranked number one, which nobody seems to care about, acknowledge, mention, like value, like nobody. And I'm not saying that I don't. I'm saying just you never hear anybody talk about it. I watch a lot of MMA content, follow a lot of MMA Twitter accounts, Instagram accounts, have friends that message me. We talk a lot of MMA, nobody brings up Caitlin Chikagian being number one. Nobody seems to care. Nobody, seems to like, I don't know, man. Seems like a paper number to a lot of people. Now, I would disagree. And here's why. I held very similar sentiments, probably about 18 months ago. Um, and she's proved me wrong every time. I think I've even bet against her and lost. I mean, she's made me eat my words a couple of times. She shows up. She shows up. And yeah, she's not better than Valentina, or, most likely is not better than Valentina from what obviously is lost to her, and I think most people don't think really anybody's as good as Valentina, but if she doesn't, I feel like Chikagian is kind of in a similar place as like Covington, and as a similar place, we've seen examples of this, where you're not gonna get another shot, or you're one B, you're one A, you're one B, and it's like I don't think Chookagian gets spoken about like that. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to do that. I like to put a little respect on her name, speak nicely things about her. She comes in. Vegas was putting respect on her name at minus 165. She was the favorite. Fighting Amanda Hebos coming in at plus 145. Now, Hebos coming up from strawweight. I believe she was a top 10 ranked strawweight, moving up to flyweight. That's always kind of an interesting narrative to see how it translates, how it performs. Um, but it's really interesting from the matchmaking perspective. I think it shows that women's flyweight needs life, honestly, and needs contenders. Kind of, you can tie that into what I was saying about Chikagian a moment ago, and that Amanda Hebus coming in, getting matched up with number one right away in your first fight in the division. I think that says a lot, both about what they probably expected from Hebus, what is probably kind of a backhanded compliment to Chikagian. Also, I think it's just widely acknowledged that that division needs life, which is a byproduct of a dominant champion. We saw it happen in 205 when Jones was champion. We've seen it happen. Fortunately, we are not really there at featherweight yet with Volk, but we've kind of seen it a little bit at middleweight. When you have a dominant champion that's beaten guys one, two times in a row, fighting them a third time, it gets a little stale. So, I think there's a lot riding on this kind of cross divisional matchup, if you will. Now, round one was very close. This is another one where I really, really, really wish Harrison was here to juxtapose our scorecards against each other, because this fight was scored different ways by each judge. Um, I gave round one to Hebus, while I acknowledge it was very close. Hebus had a takedown, the control, the pressure, all the things that you'd expect from Hebus. Now, Chikagian got back to her feet and started letting the hands go. But in classic Chikagian style, she's not known for her power. She's not, the naysayers say she's more of a point fighter, and that's essentially what happened. While she was letting the hands go and she was landing, it wasn't anything to steal around or really change the tides of the fight necessarily. But it was a close round, and she did have some success once she got back to her feet. I gave round one to Hebus, though, for the takedown and the control and the pressure. Round two, close again. Every single round was close and kind of debatable, and it's going to be reflected in the scorecards. I gave round two to Chikagian. Now, It's weird. I just said how Chikagian is not known for being super powerful, damaging. Well, I thought in round two she caused more damage than Hebus caused her. You know, I actually thought damage was on in her favor, um, and you know, because Hebus did get another takedown, but didn't really do much with it and wasn't able to get that second takedown in that round. And I thought Chikagian just looked a little better and was just really letting the hands were starting to really land for Chikagian. And I gave her the round. Uh, no, round two, once again, close. This fight, it wins fight of the night. You know, I guess it's not a spoiler. You know, fight of the night, both ladies get an extra 50 grand because it was just fucking so close, so up for interpretation, so subjective, so close, and not in the negative. You know, Rosa Sparza kind of close. It was very competitive. They were getting after it. They had very different styles, and they were each having success in those styles. So it was kind of subjective as to like who, what you valued. Now round two, I mean round three, it was another close one. I gave it to Hivas. The second half of the round, she not only got the takedown, but she started to win in the stand up, which is where she had been losing most of the fight. Um, Up until the third round, Hebus was winning on the ground. Chikagian was winning on the feet. In the third round, there started to be the first standing striking exchanges in which Hebus was starting to get the best of Chikagian. Which, when you combine that with the takedown, and then she kind of neutralizes the one area where Chikagian was having success, I think that's enough to give her the round. That being said, Chikagian probably landed the bigger shots, and this is where it gets super subjective. Like, what is a big shot from Chikagian? Like she was landing clean, flush, timing it well. Yes, all those can be true. But we have a big, giant body of work that shows that she can't put anybody out and that like she's not doesn't throw the most damaging shots and gets a lot of the close decisions. You know, it's been a knock on her throughout her career. Kind of the point fighting kind of style, lack of power. She's more of a slender built, you know, lady. So it's fine, you know, to get to number one in the world without, you know, fighting like Francis Ngannou. That's fine. People have their own styles. But that being said, does it skew how you view a big shot? It kind of did for me, and I'm admitting that to you. And my scorecard doesn't matter, but it was like this fight was really tough to score, and you could view it a certain ways. But it's like, how do you score a big shot from Caitlin Chikagian, somebody who's known to not have good power? Do you kind of take it with a grain of salt, as they might say, you know, even if it's subconsciously, you know, do you factor that in? um so two judges scored it 29-28 and one judge scored it 29-28 Reba. So I was in the minority, but one judge did agree with me. Like I said, pretty much either round could have gone either way. All three rounds could are kind of up for interpretation. There's not really a hill to die on here. I don't think anybody really got robbed or jobbed or screwed here. Just one of those close fights, you know, kind of interesting clash of styles, kind of subjective for the judges. Chikagian, like I said, for the most part, was winning on the feet, landing the bigger shots, which a lot of judges are well within their right to value more over takedown and control time. Some judges are going to value the takedown and control time. So it was really one of those up for interpretation fights. It was like a lesser version of Sanhagen Dillashaw. You know how those just classic styles led to some interesting scorecards. But yeah, one fight of the night. So, you know, both the ladies take home money. Hebus, you know, moved up in weight class, fought the number one girl. It's really hard to, you know, hold that against her. It's interesting. I think she, you know, has bright things ahead of her from here regardless. And then as far as Chikagian goes, you know, as we went all the way down to like seven to grab Tyler Santos to fight Shevchenko next, which I think happens like next week or in 2 weeks. But I mean, after that, I mean, Shevchenko's going to need somebody to fight. Yeah, maybe Chikagian gets another fight in the meantime. But I mean, I think Chikagian is pretty much under a title shot. Or otherwise, I mean, why is she still ranked number one? It's a kind of a Colby Covington situation. But I think she's only lost once and not twice, so it's different than Colby Covington. Colby Covington got his second shot. Um, yeah, you know, albeit I'm not saying I'd be super just on the edge of my seats for that matchup, and I think that's probably why the UFC hasn't been so quick to give it to her. But hey, why are we gonna have ranking systems if they don't matter? And I mean, if she's ranked number one and she's winning fights, I mean, what can you even really? There's not really an argument against it at this point, right? Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Probably, maybe just for like the timing awkwardness of it, or maybe not because her and Shevchenko are fighting so close together. So maybe her next fight's a title shot. But I know she's not a big draw. I know the UFC, that's probably not the direction they'd like to see it go. But hey, I mean, when you're ranked one and you're winning fights and you're beating top girls in your division and top girls from the other division, I mean, I don't know really what more you want from Kaylin Chikagian. I mean, it's just, yeah, she's having success. Now, up next, this fight ended up being awesome. This is a fight that I kind of changed my mind on. This fight was like, oh, this fight could have, maybe even been on the prelims. Why was this high on the card? But obviously proved to be a banger. Um, yeah, so we got Louis Smolka plus 225 versus Davy Grant minus 280 in the bantamweight division. I liked. I thought this was like a good parlay bet. I like Davy Grant a lot in this one. Smolka, he's fought down at 25. He hasn't had a ton of success at bantamweight. He's talented, and he's one of these guys where he's like good enough to be in the UFC, but like that's kind of like about where like the compliments in. I mean, he does have a massive chin. Um, I just I'm not super high on Smolka, which prevented me from because I'm pretty high on Grant, so I understand the big money line. Like I said, I thought it was a good parlay builder. I'm not the type to bet minus 280 straight up, but yeah. So I like Grant in this one. Now round one, Grant confirmed everything I thought. He put an ass whooping on Smolka like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I gave it a 10-8. I mean, he was landing huge shots just, I mean, from the opening bell, and then at the end of the round, he dropped Smolka, put him down, and I thought that was worthy of a 10-8. I would have loved to hear if Harrison agreed with me. Leave a comment if you gave it 10-8 in that round. Round two was interesting because, like I said, round one, Smoker got his ass whooped. Round two, Smoker just came out firing, man. He really let his hands go. He got a trip takedown. He got some nice ground and pound and attempted a submission. Like he had a really good round. He had a good round, just period, in a vacuum. But you factor in the ass whooping that he took it just prior to that. I apologize. I had an alarm go off on my phone. I apologize. I had an alarm go off on my phone. But yeah, so I mean, considering the ass whooping that Smoka took in round one, for him to come back and perform he did in the way in round two, I mean, hats off. That was awesome. That was badass. Um, I honestly thought this fight could have potentially got fight of the night over Chikagi and Hebos. I mean, this fight was a banger. Um, and then round three, man, Davy Grant was able to finish it off. He actually dropped him with the leg kick. It was pretty gnarly. Like Smoke could just folded, couldn't take the heavy leg kicks anymore. And then Davy Grant just finished him off with the ground and pound. But I mean, it was a competitive fight. I think it ended up being a lot closer than I or Vegas or a lot of you all expected. But yeah, it was a good one. Davy Grant didn't even get a bonus for it. I thought he could. I thought, see, Davy Grant's really who I thought came in out holding the short end of the stick in all of this bonus and situation because put on an awesome fight, get the finish. I mean, came back. I mean, yeah, I thought at the very least it could have been fight of the night in both guys. But it is what it is. Hopefully Dana took care of him. I know Davy Grant probably won himself over a lot of fans. So you know, great performance, great victory. Came back, battled through adversity, got the finish. Hey, that's awesome. Great job to Davy Grant. Um, Bantamweight division. We talk about it all the time here on the Beefy Boys Breakdown. Just so fucking stacked. Like the unranked, you got Davy Grant unranked. You got, I think Umar Nurmagomedov's unranked. You got Yanez unranked. There's so many unranked bantamweights that like are so fucking good, and I love bantamweights. I fucking love them. Next up, I believe we got the co-main event. Yes, we got the co-main event, keeping the trend with the light heavyweights, and we got Ryan Superman Span 13th ranked light heavyweight, coming in at plus 190 as an underdog. To Ion Cutelaba, minus 235, unranked. Now, I gotta say, I didn't feel super strongly, but when I saw Span at plus 190 over Cutelaba, I know Span didn't look great as last time we saw him. Um, I don't know. I don't think Ian Kunalaba is a world beater. I mean, I'm not saying Ryan Span's a world beater, but he definitely had paths to victory. And this isn't even hindsight 2020. I would have talked to more about like the knockout power if I was talking like before the fight. But yeah, I was a little bit interesting on the money line. And like I said, you can say that's hindsight 2020. I thought, I said I wasn't all over it from a betting perspective, but I kind of just enough to one of those things where you look at it and you're like, that's it's a little interesting money line. I think there's something there. And yeah, so we got Span versus Cutelaba. And man, round one, Cutelaba had like 3 takedowns, but Span would just put his feet right on the hips of Cutelaba and explode like you wouldn't believe the explosiveness that Span was using to get up. It would have been interesting had this fight gone longer to see if he was still able to do that in the later rounds because it was so explosive. But it worked 3 times in a row where he just pretty much exploded Cutelaba across the goddamn ring, like just like leg pressed him and was able just to stand up. It's kind of like Derek Lewis said, "Oh, I just stand up." Like that's pretty much what Ryan Spann was doing, and he was able to get the lock up a standing guillotine so tight. He ends up finishing it on the ground, but Ryan Spann gets the first round guillotine sub, locked it up standing. This all everything I just described to you took place for in 2 minutes and 22 seconds. So it was just breakneck speed. I mean, all action, all gas, no brakes. What you kind of expect from both of these guys is kind of in their style. Ryan Spann gets a performance of the night bonus, which I do think he deserved. After taken down 3 times in 2 minutes to lock up a standing guillotine on a guy who was a 2-1 favorite over you, like, hey, then that's 50 grand for sure. And so I'm happy to see that. He kind of gets his career back on path. Um, so yeah, good for Ryan Spann. I think winning by guillotine was important. I think so many people, myself included, was just kind of viewing him as like that big athletic power puncher, which, I guess I didn't do my homework. If you look up, his Tapology, his Sherdog, he has a lot of submission wins in his career. It probably been a while, but, so it's just kind of reminding people that he's more well-rounded than just a big athletic puncher. And yeah, gets the guillotine win. Cutelaba was being kind of, I don't know if you want to go as far as to say disrespectful, but very aggressive and combative before the fight. So Span was kind of keeping it humble, and he gets the last laugh in the end. Gets the bonus, cash is underdog for all the Span bettors out there. Yeah, I would say that was a good bet. We can keep it pushing to the main event because, like I said at the start of this, I still view Jan Blachowicz as essentially like elite champion caliber. Maybe I'm nostalgic. Maybe I'm holding on. I know he's getting older. I The loss to Glover. You can't say it was fluky, but you can't say he didn't perform his best. He said it. Everyone that's analyzed the fight has said it. So it is one of those things. And so I still hold Jan Blachowicz in high regard. He's the number one ranked light heavyweight. Another instance where the high ranked guys coming in as the underdog, coming in at plus 130. And now I liked Blachowicz at plus 130 all week. Now pretty much acknowledge myself as a Rakic hater. So take that with a grain of salt. But I did like Blachowicz plus 130, getting plus money on the fighter that I kind of still borderline view as the champ was hard to turn down. You got Alexander Rakic, hot shot prospect coming in at minus 200, the third ranked guy in the world. Said, I don't get it. It doesn't resonate with me. I thought a lot of people were going to feel similar, but apparently I'm out here on this island of just not being the biggest Rakic fan. I mean, he's put on some boring fights that I've watched. He's not active at all. He fights like once every 18 months, every 14 months. I like guys that are active. You kind of forget about him, but somehow he just keeps his ranking. Now, he does beat top guys. and he does fight top guys. And I mean, he is very talented, and he is, I guess young. But that's what I'm saying. He's young. Like, get after it. Like, I'm not saying fight 5 times a year, beat Kevin Holland, but you can't fight 2, 3 times a year. Like, seriously. Like, not even once. Like, you never. I fought. I don't think 3 times in a year. At least not in the past like 5 years. So it's like I don't know, and I'm pretty sure that's in their contract. They're supposed to fight 3 times a year, so it's like he fights like once every year and a half. I'm not on board with the Rakic hype. I don't get it, man. Like, I don't get it. I get the Prohaska hype. Oh yeah, sign me up. I get the Ankalaev hype. Like, okay, not necessarily sign me up, but I see it. I get it. Like, I see what's happening. Like, okay, cool, makes sense. 1 + 1 = 2. I just don't understand the Rakic, like out of all the UFC fans hate Bilal Muhammad, but like Alexander Rakic. Rakic is so much more boring than Muhammad, and I know that's probably a cold take to a lot of people. Probably people will push back against that, but I just don't get the Rakic love. I guess I get the Rakic ranking and kind of just the talent, and okay, cool. I'm not going to necessarily talk X's and O's with you, but I thought the fans, as far as like the kind of guys that we like, I just thought that we would be seeing eye to eye here, not be necessarily behind this. Like we like guys like Shemaev, we like guys like Kevin Holland, we like guys, like I don't know, just insert guys that fight all the top guys like all the time, man, and those are the guys that we like, and I just don't get it. I don't get how I thought everybody was going to be on the Jan Blachowicz train, like the former champ, like gave it some fun memories, and everybody was just riding Rakic's nuts all week. I mean, we can dive into the fight. Round one actually was a banger. Shout out to Jan Blachowicz because it was up to Rakic. It would have been a snoozer. Yeah, I said it. Um, Now Blachowicz actually was coming with a volume approach, which we don't always see from the Polish power. Um, and he wobbled Rakic twice. And Jan Blachowicz was chewing up the leg with these massive calf kicks. So I liked what I saw out of Blachowicz. I really liked what I saw out of Blachowicz, especially considering the last time we saw Blachowicz. So I mean, that first round was awesome. Now, um, Rakic did cut Blachowicz's eye in the first round. He cut it with a jab, and hey, say I'm being a hater if you want. It was kind of fluky. And if you're giving Rockets that first round because of that cut, you're a casual. There, I said it. If you gave Rockets that first round because of that fucking lucky ass fluky cut from a jab, it wasn't like it was an elbow or a knee. It was a jab that just kind of slid by the side of the glove, a weird angle, caught like a weird tender part of the eye, tore it. Come on. If you're giving Rockets that first round because of that cut, I'm pulling your MMA card because I just don't see it that way. Now it was a banger of a round, and Rockets did have some success. Like I said, he was obviously landing. Yes, he landed, and he did cut him, and it did impact him, and he did have some success. But I think Blachowicz, I mean, he hurt him bad twice. I gave him the first round. Now round two, I did give to Rockets. Now it was a wrestling approach, which kind of proves my point that Blachowicz round one on the feet. Rakic, turned into a wrestler, got the single leg. He got some control time. Now, Blachowicz was pretty goddamn close to locking up a triangle at one point, but Rakic was able to escape that, and he got some mediocre ground and pound in on the former champ. Um, Now, round three, this fight ends how we never want any fight to end, but these are human beings. It happens in all sports, but and unlike other sports, there's no backup to call in when the guy, blows his knee out, and that's what we have here. Rakic, well, in football, we call it a non-contact injury, which you can say it was contact because he was in the middle of a fist fight, but if you watch it back, I mean, he literally just takes a step back. He just takes a step and then takes another step back. Now he took those steps back because Blachowicz was, coming after him. So you could debate the semantics of non-contact if you want, but I'm saying nothing Blachowicz did caused his knee to buckle. It wasn't a kick, it wasn't a knee bar, it wasn't a heel hook. it was just he took a bad step backward, and you see his knee just kind of just explode. It was just it was gruesome and slow mo, like actually rough to watch, like actually kind of made me a little queasy. Um, just brutal. I mean, like I said, I classify that as a non-contact injury. If you disagree with that, leave a comment below. Um, so technically, it goes down as a TKO win for Jan Blachowicz. I think Jan Blachowicz was going to win the fight. The, I've been hearing people just still, even after the fight, riding Rakic's nuts and just I don't know because he won round two. He definitely won round two. I'm not arguing that, but okay, you think Blachowicz has never lost a round two and came back to win the fight? I mean, surely he has. So I don't know. I still believe in the champ. I thought he was going to come back and win anyways. It does set him up for a rematch with Glover. I think, or a fight with Prohaska, because either way, because I think if Glover loses to Prohaska, gotta think there's a pretty decent chance he retires, right? Maybe not in the moment, but I don't know. Who knows? But so that would set up Blachowicz versus Prohaska, or Glover beat Prohaska and then fight um, Blachowicz next would probably be the right move for the UFC. Former champ over the immediate rematch for the youngster Prohaska. Prohaska's young; he gets time to make his way back to the belt. Maybe Prohaska goes and fights Rakic or something. Who knows? A lot of stuff you could do with him. But or there's even a situation where what if Glover defends his belt, beats Prohaska, and retires on top, and then you can move Blachowicz versus Prohaska for, I guess, the vacant light heavyweight title. So a lot of moving parts there, a lot of fun possibilities. But I think all of those fun possibilities, all those conversations, include the name Jan Blachowicz, which I like Jan Blachowicz. Like I said, it's obvious. I've made it pretty obvious. I've had a pretty biased breakdown, but I like Jan Blachowicz. I want to see him good. I wouldn't mind seeing him have the belt wrapped around him one more time. I like Prohaska too. So if Prohaska gets the belt and keeps it and it goes on a dominant run, that'd be pretty fucking sweet too. Um, we got Ankalaev coming up to the light heavyweight. Just all of a sudden, light heavyweight has a little bit of interest, a little bit of juice on it. I mean, you got. I think Paulo Costa should move up. That would be fucking awesome. I think apparently he's scheduled against Rockhold, which Rockhold used to fight at 205 too. I don't even know where that fight's scheduled at, what weight class. I don't know. Um, so maybe you got Paulo Costa coming up. You got I don't know. It's just an interesting division. You know 8 months ago it was a stale division. So it's a lot of fun in the light heavyweight division. I'm happy for my man Jan Blachowicz. Now, obviously, I was down on Rakic, but I mean, obviously the injury is devastating. You don't want to see that happen to any athlete. By no means am I like stoked or fired up about that at all. Hell no, don't get it twisted. Not what I'm saying at all. Get well soon, Rakic. You know, yeah, I would never, do that type of personal dig. It's just like Rakic, not the biggest fan of his fight style, but as far as the injury goes, it's tragic. He's young. I'm really hoping he can bounce back from it and just continue to be a factor in the light heavyweight division. Because I think this was the number one contenders match. Yeah, I mean, he was one fight away, which is just, how bad that would feel. Anybody out there who's ever played a sport, can you imagine being one fight, one game, one contest, one tournament, you know, one contest away from being a champion, and you blow your knee out in just catastrophic fashion on national television, international television. Just feel for the guy. That's brutal. That's really brutal. You don't wish that on anybody. So get well soon, Rakic. Blachowicz. I think he has to have surgery on this because his cut his tear duct or some shit. So he has to have surgery on his eye. But like I said, it kind of works out because the title fight's being contested in like 2 weeks. And then, depending on how that goes, the guy who wins it might need time to heal up or what have you. So I think he has time. But yeah, interesting stuff in the light heavyweight division. This was episode 88 of the Beefy Boys Breakdown. You can follow us on Twitter and engage with us at Beefy Boys Breakdown. Actually, at Beefy Breakdown, just at Beefy Breakdown on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram at Dreadful Talk Dom. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beefy Boys Breakdown. You can also find us on Facebook at Beefy Boys Breakdown as well. Thanks so much, everybody. I love talking fights. I hope you enjoy talking them as well. And yeah, we'll be right back next week. We talk every single fight every single week here on the Beefy Boys Breakdown. Subscribe. Appreciate you. Have a good one, everybody.